Formula 1 makes its way to the Belgian GP, which has been on the calendar for over 60 years and holds the title of being the most dangerous yet beautiful track in Formula 1. If you ever want to get a friend into Formula 1, this is the track you'd probably want to show them that really shows the raw, true pace of these Formula 1 cars. It's given us some of the most memorable moments in Formula 1 history, whether that be bad or good. The Spa track represents Formula 1. We're going to start with the 1987 rivalry of Senna versus Mansell, where Nigel tried going for an overtake on Senna. The attempt did not work, but the two did end up colliding, and it forced immediately Senna to retire from the race. Mansell tried going on, but by lap 17, he also had to retire due to the damage, and it didn't end there. Some punches were thrown in the paddock after a very heated argument, but this never really solved that rivalry between the two drivers. One of the masters of Spa, Michael Schumacher, also made his debut here. There's plenty of things to go over here with Michael. He started Formula 1 at this beautiful track, which for a rookie to start his career at Spa, that has so many deaths of famous Formula 1, Formula 2, and the list goes on of drivers that have passed away sadly due to the track being so dangerous. And Michael coming in and giving the performance that he did, he started in P7 in qualifying, which was their best performance of the year in that car. He ended up getting all the way to P5, but with the clutch issue had to retire. But it didn't stop there for Michael. He's won the race 6 times, which is the most race wins here on this track, and he won his 7th world title in Spa. So this is the Michael Schumacher track pretty much. Who can forget Formula 1's most infamous GP in 1998, where millions and millions of dollars were spent on Formula 1 cars due to the damage that was caused multiple times over on multiple different restarts. This could be a video in itself. The 1998 GP started off weird because in turn 1, nothing happened, no collisions, but then on the straight, David Coulthard loses control of his car, aquaplaned into the wall. This was a very treacherous, rainy GP throughout the whole entire Grand Prix, and 13 other drivers were caught up in this mess, which led to some insane photos and around $13 million in damage. The rest of the race was just as spicy. Mika Häkkinen also spun the car on the first corner of the restart, which then nailed Fernando Alonso's #1 fan, Johnny Herbert, which eventually gave Damon Hill the lead. Michael and Damon were going at it. At some point, there was a crash between David Coulthard and Schumacher when Schumacher was actually trying to overlap him, but due to the spray, could not see him and ended up hitting the rear of his car. We saw Michael pissed off at the end of the race, almost another Senna versus Mansell type of incident. Hill took the lead and got the victory. I don't think we'll ever get this dramatic of a Belgium GP. There have been plenty of crazy overtakes here, but one that definitely sticks in the memory is in 2000 when Mika did the beautiful overtake on Michael, which was very unexpected with the back marker and used it to perfection. Michael is the most dominant driver on this track, but Mika in his time period in that McLaren definitely put on a show. With the crazy turn 1 crash with Grosjean pulling off a signature move, becoming a wrecking ball and going into plenty of drivers in the first turn of Spa. We then had the 2021 race, which was insane to watch. I'm joking, it was 2 laps under the safety car, it was too wet, and one of the only races in recent time that actually had to be canceled due to the amount of rain coming. And then we also had in 2022 Max winning from 14th to P1 in the Red Bull in a very dominant fashion. No one was even close, and I do think by the end of his career, Max probably will be the champion of Spa. The memories on this track are endless. It's just one of those GPs that always provides and gives insane entertainment value. As of recent years, with the competition not being very close, it hasn't been the most satisfying, at least to fight at the front, but always in the midfield and the back markers, it's very close because this type of track provides a 2-stop, and with the tires that we have here, which is C2, C3, and C4, it will give us different strategies to go over. The tire stress on this track is a 5 out of 5. It's one of the largest tracks across the whole world, and there's all kinds of corners here, but with the combination of going with a 2 out of 5 on downforce, it means sectors 2 and 3 will be very deadly on the tires, and it's very important that drivers can pretty much preserve these tires. Braking is intense here, at least in the sections that you need to. There are very high speed corners, you got medium speed, you got slow speed. There's nothing the Spa track doesn't offer that makes the Formula 1 drivers have to think about each corner they go into. It's the longest track on the F1 calendar, and it's very common that we could see some rain here that spices up a nice drama fest of a GP. And at some point the track was even twice as long as it is right now. Let's go over a lap on Formula 1's most dangerous track on the calendar year. Starting off the lap on the start-finish line going into turn 1, it's a very hard braking zone where the exit has to be prioritized, and drivers will usually go as left as possible in qualifying. In the race, we could see some dive bombs happen here because it's very important to take the lead. After turn 1, you then go into a straight, which leads into one of the most fascinating parts of the circuit, which is Le Rouge and Raidillon, and some of the most beautiful corners the F1 track has to offer, as well as some of the most deadly corners because of the speed that you take at that elevation. It makes it a blind corner, and if there's a driver that's crashed above this section, it's very hard to see them. And that's where Spa really gets its recognition of being a very dangerous track. There have been some revisions done to help this out, but it's very tough to change this without taking away the heritage of the Spa track. This then leads us into another DRS zone, which is after turn 4, which is Raidillon. And we will see plenty of overtakes here. You carry a lot of speed, some of the fastest speeds on our calendar year, with the exception of something like Monza or Mexico. And this probably will be the most prominent area for overtakes. This is sector 1, but then it goes into sector 2 with turns 5 and 6, which are very technical corners. You're taking them at about a medium speed. In 5, you got to prioritize the entry, while in 6, you're prioritizing the exit to set up turn 7, which then leads us into turn 8, where understeer will always happen for the drivers no matter the settings you put on, but you try preventing this as much as possible with your steering angle going into 9, where you want to prioritize the exit yet again, which then leads us into another beautiful part of the Spa circuit in turns 10 and 11, where you will have to have a slight brake unless you are the RB19 or the W11. This then leads us into another technical part of the track in turns 12 and 13, where you prioritize the entry on 12, but then in 13 you prioritize the exit yet again, which is another hard braking zone at the end of sector 2 in turn 14, and going on full throttle as soon as possible is very important into 15, which then leads us into a sector that's pretty much straight out the whole way through. Turn 16 and 17, you're flat out there. But it's very hard to get an overtake unless you're Max Verstappen, who practiced in iRacing this overtake. It then leads us into the last part of the lap with the hardest braking zone in turns 18, where we will see overtakes. But in qualifying, you want to set up that entry so that in 19, you can pretty much put the car straight out to get a great finish on Formula 1's most beautiful track, Spa. This track really has it all, so it's going to be tough to talk about the teams considering how it's been in the pecking order, and really the characteristics of these cars make it difficult to judge Spa, but I got a good idea of what are our best, worst teams in the top 5, so let's go over my predictions. Starting off these predictions, we're going to talk about the best teams. I'm going to make this simple and quick. I think Red Bull will have the fastest car here, specifically in the hands of Max Verstappen. They're going to go back to that older spec that they had that Perez ran in Hungary, and I do believe the Red Bull car is pretty much structured around the track like Spa. In 22 they were dominant, in 23 they were dominant. I expect it again. Not as much domination, but in the hands of Max, I think they can be the fastest here, and we will see them towards the top again. In P2, with the fastest car usually on tracks is McLaren. I do think this track will show to Red Bull's biggest strengths in its car with its high speed and straight line. The McLaren is still a bit weak on straight line. It's just got the perfect amount of downforce that Red Bull hasn't been able to nail yet. But because downforce isn't that important, Red Bull in P1, McLaren in P2, and Mercedes in P3 following the two, I don't think it's going to be as close as it usually has been between these top 3. The worst teams here, to make it simple, Sauber will be in P10. Even with the new upgrades, I do believe this is still the worst car as of right now. Alpine will be close behind. It's a track that matters a lot on engine modes. They're still pretty draggy, and the car just isn't that fast in straight line, so I don't believe Alpine to be a strong contender here with such a tight midfield. Last team, it's going to be a toss-up, but I'm going to have Williams just slightly in P8 here. I do think RB will be very close as well because they're very slow and draggy, but I think the Williams now having a better overall downforce package won't actually go to their strengths like it usually used to. As for the top 5 drivers, let's talk about them. In P5, I got Lewis. I do think the Mercedes will be weaker here than the McLaren and the Red Bull. In P4, I got George. I think George will actually get the better of Lewis here. Even though this has been a good track for Lewis, I think George is going to come in with some fire after not having the greatest qualifying in Hungary, which then put him back, but having an actually pretty decent GP considering the amount of cars they've overtaken. In P3, P2, and P1, it's difficult to decide except for P1, which you've probably already guessed. I do think P3 will be Lando. I think Oscar will top him yet again in P2. And in P1, I think Maximilian is going to get the dub here in Spa. This just seems to be the Max track. It's where he pretty much grew up, and I do believe this is his strongest track of the season. I still think we'll get an entertaining race even with Max being P1. It'll be nice to see him back towards the top. It's been a little bit, and I think this track really goes to his strength. Let's finish the video with the 3 questions you guys asked. Let's go over them. With the most likes, Joker906 asks, post-summer break, what team do you think will improve the most? Just to play devil's advocate, which team do you think will flop post-summer break? Teams are going to go in with a resetted mindset after 3 weeks of a break, and there always seems to be a team that jumps up after the summer break, so it's a very good question. And I think the team that's going to jump up the most will be Alpine because they're going to bring a B-spec car here. They're going to be much better than they have before. Sometimes they're P10, sometimes they're P5. I have a bit of belief considering they've waited this long to put out a completely different car, and they're going to have to ride this momentum into 2025, but I do think Alpine will be the most solid car after the summer break. That doesn't mean they're going to jump a lot of teams, but I think their car overall will get much better and improve, as you said. And the team that I think is going to flop the most, for some reason, I feel like RB, considering they've been going back on their upgrades. The car that Ricciardo drove in Hungary was a spec all the way from the Miami GP, which means their upgrades are going to have to be set back even longer considering they're running a completely different car now. So the parts they did have in the wind tunnel will have to be set back even further. I have a feeling RB is not going to be great after the summer break, and they might start falling back further. Next question by Daily W Videos. Do you think McLaren will bring any major upgrades for the rest of the season? Because after Miami, they've brought practically nothing. And to answer this question simply, I do think they will have some major upgrades here. It's a matter of being able to optimize the car better than your competition. If you're the strongest car, there's no rush to bring updates unless you have a weakness, but the McLaren isn't weak anywhere. They just need to bring a package that's able to optimize what they already have to just gain them the slightest time because they're up on Red Bull, they're up on Mercedes, they're up on Ferrari. They don't have to rush what is in the wind tunnel as of currently. Last question by 5 Bravo Aviation. If Perez does very well in Spa, will there be a bigger chance for him to be kept at Red Bull for the remainder of the season or even next season? As much as I would like Checo to do good here, I don't really see it coming even with them having the strongest car. But let's say he does do good here in Spa. Will that give him a bigger chance? We saw what happened in Hungary. Their patience is running thin. He has to have an outstanding performance here to really show them what could happen. He's down in the Drivers' Championship. He's behind Max in more than 100 points. It would take a lot for Red Bull to really change their mind if the rumors are true of what's in the contract clauses and Perez will be dropped if he doesn't meet this criteria. I'm not sure, honestly. The best answer I could give you right now is that I do think he will be dropped after the summer break, but I think that'll actually help him look through the market because he's still a driver that belongs on the grid. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe. It would mean the world, and peace.